Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the deep dive. That's right. It's time to go for the deep dive for Jay Nelson, the Magazine Miller. That is the deck I did a couple weeks ago, and I've learned a lot playing this deck, to say the least. Like, fun. It has been an awesome experience. I absolutely loved it. One thing about this deck is it has Auto-Encoder, and I kind of honed in on that aspect and used it as kind of the focal point of how I wanted to play and learn this deck. So I've got my DOK up with the deck, and I'm going to go over what I have learned from playing this deck and utilizing its auto-encoder capabilities. So why don't we just jump right on into that right now. So here you can see we have Jay Nelson, the Magazine Miller. And we have, you can see upgrades got 2, 3 artifacts, 12 actions, 19 creatures, okay? When I did my deep dive, I, notice, of course, had 11 Ember, Raw, 19, had a board control of 10, a Ember control of 11 cards, efficiency of 8, which actually is a lot higher because of auto-encoder, then disruption of 3, and then you're going to have to reap about 11 times. So with that being said, here we are. You'll notice that there is 5 cards that have capture bonuses and 1 with a damage bonus. So Effervescent Principle had the damage bonus, and then all the rest had a single capture bonus on them. So the first thing that I had with this deck was, like I said, I identified Auto-Encoder as an amazing card with this deck. It was really good, and I actually went with the means of utilizing it to try and even hard mulligan for it. The only times I didn't hard mull for this was when I had a strong house in hand. So sometimes if I had like 4 Sanctum cards in hand, I would not hard mulligan for this because I knew that once I played those, I was going to cycle more into the rest of my deck and have a higher chance of getting this. So I took that approach, which was really worked really well for me. That being said, when I wasn't hard mulling, well, I did hard mull most of the time, but I was getting it at the start pretty frequently. The latest I ever got Auto-Encoder out was by turn 5, and that happened 3 times. A couple turn 3s, a couple turn 1s and turn 2s, like right after the first turn, like basically pulling into it, stuff like that. And it was honestly great. Getting it out early with this deck works really well. Reason being is having sloppy lab work was fantastic and had a capture bonus on it. So being able to discard a card and archive a card was just creating that cycle really, really fast. And then, of course, there is QMEX in this, which was very, very nice. It was allowing me to have the capability of utilizing that. And then there's also, of course, the double Lyco bot in here, which themselves want you to reap, discard a card from your hand, and if you do, draw. And then aside from that, there was the, of course, Techno Thief as well. Here's the cool thing with this deck that I found out. Once I started getting Auto-Encoder out, Shadows was a dead house for me. I did not care to have any of these creatures on board. Between Francis, Gamgee, Shoulder Ids, and Techno Thief, I was 90% of the time just discarding them. I did not care for them. I thought that they were not necessary for what I wanted. What I actually wanted was to put Sanctum and Logos on the board. So under Logos, I had 2, 4, 6 creatures there, but on Sanctum, I had 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 creatures there. And the cool thing is this deck has Honorable Claim, which is each friendly knight captures 1. And guess what? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knights in this deck. So I could capture 6 Ember with it. And being able to archive when I discard means I was actually really doing a fantastic job of cycling through the deck every time, so I could actually get Honorable Claim back more than once. So that was the first kind of thing, is I noticed I really wanted to get Logos and Sanctum on board and then utilize that to win the game through reaping and etc. like that. Like I said, Heist Knight for me, I thought could be good with 3 Thieves, but generally I did not get to use it. I did use it a few times though, but for the most part, this was an auto discard. The only way it really worked is if early on I was putting Francis out just because I hadn't got Auto-Encoder yet, Gamgee, and Techno Thief. If I hadn't gotten it out yet, I would basically put those cards out. That's when I was playing Shadows Creatures, is when I did not have Auto-Encoder out, and there was no point of just discarding them. I just put bodies on the board, and then, you know, later on I would happen to get Ice Knight, and it made sense to have that transition of taking some Ember from my opponent, gaining some Ember just from playing the card. That was when it really got played, is when Auto-Encoder was not quite in the picture yet. The really nice thing that Auto-Encoder provided was that cards like Standardized Testing and Effervescent Principle, sometimes they just weren't necessary. Same with Opposition Research, actually. Not. I sometimes didn't want to use these. It was maybe because my opponent had almost no creatures on board, so this Opposition Research didn't work. The Ember situation didn't feel right using a chain, so the value was very limited. Them losing maybe 1 or 2 Ember didn't feel great. And then Standardized Testing. The problem with this was my Novu Dynamo and my Anaphales really made that the high point of the board. So it didn't really work out that I could use Standardized Testing as often as I thought you would be able to. So that really didn't work out for me. And then I was capturing a lot of Ember. So I was actually not afraid to just discard Effervescent Principle when Auto-Encoder is out. Same with Opposition Research, Standardized Testing, and just start cycling and set up those big turns. And that's really what happened, is I would set up these big Logos and Sanctum turns and really have those fantastic turns. One thing that was nice was I found a Jizzleheart Zealot was kind of cool. I could literally use that, swing into something with 3 power, and then just throw a Seraphic armor on it and heal it. Use it on Anaphales a lot as well. It just worked out really well in that sense. One really cool thing about this deck, which I found was very important, was Scrivener Fabian. I love this card. It's one of my favorite mutants. And with 5 capture icons in the deck, this card became very valuable, and people identified it as such and took care of it quite a bit. And when it wasn't, they were punished 100%. Very much punished. So Scrivener Fabian is definitely an all-star in the Sanctum lineup for me. I was looking to get that out. Perplexing Sophistry has a capture icon on it, so I have to say this card did a lot of work. It was great being able to capture, gain, and then have it go off. So my percentage of actually utilizing the ability this card provides was huge. Really, really potent card, because it was also allowing me to do a little bit of disruption for my opponent and help me cycle and get some draw going on. Now, when you have Auto-Encoder out, it did some really neat things. People who had cards like Subtle Auto, those discards, which I can't remember. I think it's not Waking Nightmare, but the other one, I can't remember. Mindfire, that's it. When it was asking me to discard a card, I was cool with that because they're discarding something, I'm archiving something. It really had a really nice aspect in that sense. And then I played one game against someone who had Punctuated Equilibrium, and they had it turn 1 and literally just had to hold the card. They couldn't use it against me because this swing of discarding my whole hand, drawing, and then archiving so much was too great. And so I got Auto-Encoder out early, and it literally stops Punctuated Equilibrium play, which is really neat. The other thing is I like the fact that Shadows had 7 cards that were actions, because I didn't mind playing those. Well, sorry, not 7 cards. 7 cards that were not creatures. The spike traps are really handy. I really used those to help take care of my QMEX. And so that was great. Novu Dynamo put in so much work as well. I was able to have QMEX sometimes in the archive as a backup if I was about to go into check, and I think I won a game or 2 doing that. I played 10 games with this, and I went 4 wins and 6 losses. The thing is, I was only blown out, I think, twice, and they were really outstanding decks. And the rest, it was like some of the games went really long because this deck is able to stay in the game. Like the high cycle really put in a lot of work, and so it was fantastic. One thing is Desania really hurts this deck, obviously. Any artifact control that can get rid of Auto-Encoder is not favorable, but not the end of it. So those were some things. Lethalogica with a capture icon was great as well. I really like this, being able to get more Logos cards out there, cycling through the deck, etc. Really helped for all the things this deck wanted to do. Now, one last thing that I wanted to talk about with this deck was I was really surprised what it was like to be playing a deck that you're basically eliminating almost a whole house, and that being Shadows. See, breakdown there. And it was just amazing. Like, I couldn't believe how cool it was to just basically ignore an entire house and just play the other two. It was a lot of fun to do this. It was a neat experience, and I really enjoyed it. It was a like one of the best things I've done in KeyForge was just decide, you know what, I'm going to ignore this house and just focus on my other two. Without a doubt, Sanctum was the all-star of making this deck win because the creatures were so big it could do control, it can be reaping. It just worked really well. There's some games I think I put even down a Sanctum board and it wasn't dealt with and I just reaped out. So that was a thing as well, which was really neat. Titan Engineer also put in a lot of work. Having that ability to just increase key costs for a while was really nice. And lastly, the thing is, even Ivan didn't put in a lot of work. I didn't really care about it. I would sometimes just sacrifice it if need be, just to do some things. It was great. I really like QMEX and Novu Dynamo, though, I gotta say. I think Novu Dynamo and Auto-Encoder is a fantastic combination. So that really pretty much sums it up. Look Over There was great as well. Tempting Offer was a discard a lot. A lot of the times that card ended up getting discarded. That pretty much sums up this deck right here. And I hope this analysis and a little bit deeper dive into it is something you find interesting and want me to do this again, because I actually love this. This was so much fun for me. I played a game with on Crucible and Cognac with Muffins, which will be coming out in the next couple days, so you can look to that next. And I will say that this deck has become one of my favorite decks to play, hands down. Even though it did not have a winning record, I never ever didn't enjoy playing the deck, and the ability to stay in games and be able to just do things to frustrate the opponent was next level, and it's so much fun cycling. It's made me have a new appreciation for the card Auto-Encoder, and it also makes me want to look to my other Auto-Encoder decks and see which one is the best one in my pool, because this one definitely set a really high bar and was a lot of fun to play. So like I said, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to look for something else to do for a deep dive. I actually have one deck that I opened that I was planning. I actually did a video and it didn't record properly, so I never got to showcase the deck. So I have it opened and I'm going to look to do that one next. So stay tuned for that next one, which will be the same sort of idea. Do a video going over the deck, and then one to follow up after I've played 10 games and what I've learned and what I've discovered. So thanks everyone who tuned in and for all your support. As always, may your ember never be stolen and your keys forged promptly. Have a good one.